Boston rock and roll legend Mickey Bliss is in the studio today. Hello, Mickey.
Hello, Joe.
Welcome to Winthrop Cable.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. Glad to be here.
I want to talk about your life. You know a lot about the rock scene in Boston, but I want to talk about you, how you got into it. What was your first instrument?
I believe trumpet was the first one I studied back when I was in Catholic school. Probably third grade, maybe second or third grade.
Catholic school where?
Kingston, Massachusetts.
Oh, down the Cape.
School.
Sacred Heart.
Yes, Sacred Heart.
So they have a music program and you could pick trumpet?
Well, not so much you picked as that they had bands and orchestras, and the music director would tell you what to play depending on what you needed in the band.
So you had to learn what they needed?
Yeah, I think as I remember, that was a long time ago. The other thing, I actually wanted to play sax, and I remember my dentist told my parents that sax would give me buck teeth and that the trumpet would push them back in. So that was another factor in playing trumpet.
Okay. And how long did you play trumpet?
2 or 3 years. I remember I got braces on my teeth, so I couldn't play the trumpet anymore because it was, too hard to fit my mouth in the mouthpiece with the braces, and they cut my lips. So they switched me to trombone, and then they started switching me to baritone and tuba, which I didn't really like too much. So then I stopped playing the horn when they put me on the big horns. Trombone was okay. Trombone back in those days was still kind of hip, but baritone or the tuba wasn't too cool.
Did you evolve to other instruments from there?
Not so much that I evolved as I stopped playing for a while, but then when the Beatles came out, I was about 7th grade when the Beatles came out, and like everybody else, I wanted to play guitar. So eventually, when I was in high school, I picked up guitar and started playing guitar.
Did you see them around the corner here at Suffolk Downs?
No, I was a little bit too young for that. My folks, I never even thought about going, but I would have been too young to go to that, just a little bit.
Yeah, I was 12 in '66, so my friend JoJo and your friend JoJo was 14, but she was there.
Yeah.
And my good friend Bobby Hebb opened up.
Yeah.
It was just funny. Sunny, because I was driving by here and I had to go by Suffolk Downs, and there it is. But you love the Beatles. I love, the show is subtitled Digression, so I do spin off.
That's okay.
This book is just great. Jeff Emmerich, Here, There, and Everywhere. I can't put it down. It's just, he tells a lot of secrets of how the Beatles recorded, because he was at the very first session and their very last session.
But there's a big difference.
Big difference, but he objectively tells the story. He gets a little biased towards the individual members or individual circumstances, but you can cut through that, and he really does tell the making of the records in a way that I've never read anywhere before. I think the book is very valuable.
I'll have to pick it up when I get a chance.
Because the Beatles pushed the boundaries with experimenting with sound. You knew it listening to the records, but not to the extent that he goes into it. They really, every record, they wanted to alter the sounds.
And how much of it had to do with them and how much had to do with George Martin?
It had more to do, I think, with... I like George Martin in the mix. I think it had more to do with the tension of George Martin coming from the classical background, the Beatles coming from the rock and roll from the Hamburg Club. I think the two pushing and pulling was a good thing. Kind of like when I had the radio show with Harvey Warfield. We would fight every single week, and the show was superior. When I left, it was all Harvey. It was kind of like the Beatles solo albums.
Yeah.
So you only got, we would fight and argue over records, but we'd be happy at the end of the show because it was a great show. You got to play this. No, I gotta. And in a cart would go flying, a poor intern would go running, but we came out with a great product.
Yeah.
You need that kind of balance. And when I left, Harvey went real suburban rock.
Yeah.
And you could just feel it. And we still talk today, and he's been on the show. But you went to the guitar, so did you play in a band?
Yeah, I think that's how I really started playing guitar, was getting in a band. I remember my dad had bought me an acoustic guitar, but it was kind of unplayable. The strings were about that far from the neck and everything, so I didn't do too much on that. And then I think I joined a little neighborhood band and bought an electric guitar, and that's when I really got serious about trying to learn how to play. And then my mom had me take guitar lessons in between, where I could learn how to books myself, and with what I learned from the guitar teacher, I was able to play. I remember getting a Venturers record that was how to play along with the Venturers, and it had probably what they call tab now, and you could actually play along with the record. There was parts that you could play along with, and that was the first real rock and roll that I remember learning how to play was that Venturers record. You know, plus little stuff that people would teach me here and there. I can remember we used to bring our guitars into school, and you know, kids that could play more than me would teach me stuff. I remember a kid teaching me the chords to Gloria, remember By the Shadows of Night, and how to play the lead part to Gloria. And then we used to go to dances and watch the bands. I mean, a lot of it was just learned by seeing what the other guys were playing. We'd stand right up in front of the guitar players and, you know, watch what they were doing and go home and try and play it.
Now, the club you book in Cambridge, Somerville, which is the Kirkland Cafe, Club Bohemia. It's funny that you mentioned the Ventures, because that's really kind of the sound that a lot of the bands love that you book into the club.
Oh, yeah, we were right in the forefront of booking the surf bands. We did it, I mean, I started booking in 1993, and I think we had our first, you know, surf music night just a couple of months after I was there. And when that movie Pulp Fiction came out, that was, you know, really pushed things. I mean, before then, there wasn't much interest in it. And then when that came out, all we had to do was advertise the show as being a surf night there for about a year or so, and the place would be packed.
Because of Pulp Fiction?
It seemed like that was the thing that got everybody's imagination running wild about surf music. So, yeah, that was good for about a year and a half, and then, you know, like everything else, it became a fad, and then nobody was interested.
Cycle.
So, I mean, we still do them, but now we're lucky if we can get, you know, 20 people to come out to a surf show.
We'll digress again to come back full circle, because I was on the MySpace.com today, and I went into Carmelita's site.
Oh, yeah.
And she's on AAF, the DJ on WAAF. And there on Carmelita's site, there's a site for Marlo from Cantones. And I'm like, my God, Marlo, this old friend of mine from 1978, 79, when, you know, she booked Cantones, and then I think I booked Cantones after her, and then she came back, and my phone number was Yell Fun. You used to dial Yell Fun to get a booking.
Yep.
And then she became Navy Fun. When I left, it was like Navy Fun.
And Carmelita was booking for a while, too.
Carmelita did Monday and Tuesday nights, and I did Wednesday through Saturday.
That's how I first met her. Wow.
Yeah, booking Cantones.
Yep.
And that was really a surf kind of club, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly, yeah.
Among other things. So what prompted you to make Club Bohemia happen?
Well, at that particular time, I was playing another band. And,
Called
the Modniks.
Okay, yeah.
And I had picked up trumpeting, and I hadn't played for years, but it was kind of a funny story how I picked up trumpet. I've been playing organ for quite a while, and when I got married, my wife couldn't stand the sound of me practicing the organ. She thought I sounded like Dracula. So she said, well, I got to get him another instrument to get him off the organ. And she says, the trumpet, that's a lot smaller than an organ, so it must not be as loud. So
Little did she know.
made the mistake of buying me a trumpet.
Whoa.
And, back in those days, I used to practice 6 or 7 hours a day because I didn't have any children or anything. So I'd come home right from work, start practicing before dinner, have dinner, you know, play another couple more hours, and weekend play all day. So anyways, I picked up trumpet. I was playing trumpet in this band, the Modniks, and somebody that lived in the neighborhood where the Kirkland is came and told us, geez, you guys should go down and try and get a gig at the Kirkland. They're having trouble booking bands. So as soon as I heard that, I talked to the other guys in the band. I says, you know, we should tell them we'll book the club for them. And then, you know, we can always give ourselves a show, you know, on a regular basis and book all the other bands.
Sure.
So that's what we did. The other guys went down and talked to the owner. Joe Hernan was alive then. Joe owned it. And to my surprise, they actually went for it. They gave us like a 3-month oral contract, you know, see how we would do. And, you know, the 3 months that we started like June of 1993, the 3 months came and went a long time ago, and I'm still there. The other guys got sick of it after about a couple of months or a year and dropped out, you know, left me with it.
Did you tape any of your shows, the Modniks?
I didn't personally, but I mean, people have. I have Artie Freeman, for instance. I don't know if you know Artie.
Yeah, sure.
Artie's taped some of the shows, and he's given me some dubs, and, you know, a lot of other people. My brother came in. My brother does Access down in Plymouth, and he's taped some shows. So, yeah, people have taped a lot of shows.
Oh, wow, we should try to resurrect some Modniks and put it on the air if you'd like.
Yeah, the Modniks, I'm not sure if the Modniks are taped. I thought you were talking about the Mickey Bliss band. I'm sure somebody probably did tape the Modniks, but I don't know where I would find that. But we were there, yeah, we used to, I think, play once a month, either once a month or twice a month. We did that for about 6 or 7 months. What happened was, the other deal we had with the club is they used to let us practice on Thursdays.
Oh.
Because one of the things the fellows were kind of concerned about was not being able to practice because we were still trying to get the band together. So they used to let us practice on Thursday nights. But then they only kind of got sick of it because, as he said, we not only were not bringing any people in, but we were scaring people out.
Okay.
But it wasn't so much that the band was terrible, it's just that we looked at it like a practice session because we were bringing a lot of people into the club and doing a lot of work, but the club was still open. But
and you'd
when
be
it was a
stopping
practice
and
session,
starting.
yeah, it would be starting songs, jamming, typical things you would do in a practice session, but, the customers didn't like it too much. So Joe cut the Thursday night, and that's when the other guys get kind of upset, and that's when they quit doing it.
But you must have seen some pretty incredible things over the past, 13 years?
Oh, yeah, all kinds of things.
Some good bands come through?
Oh, unbelievably good bands. It's just amazed at the talent that's out there.
So Artie must have a lot of stuff documented.
Oh, Artie started doing audio tapes probably about 1980, I would say, maybe even in the 70s. And he was one of the first people with a video camera. I mean, now you see people at every show with a video camera, but when he first started, you never see him. In fact, the Phoenix did an article on him in the mid-90s, and they were able to describe him as that guy you see at the rock shows with a video camera, because he was still the only one, even in the mid-90s, that would be there with a video camera. And he's just got probably rooms full of tapes.
He does. I've been over his house.
Yeah,
with the iguana. He's got the iguanas and the.
Yeah.
He's got a
tarantula.
Zoo. Yeah, he's got tarantula, iguana, bird, and then he's got these tapes, just tapes. July 22nd of 2006, we're doing Live at the Kirkland, where I'm going to set up a tape recorder. Maybe I should talk to Artie about coming down that night too, but maybe we should go through the Artie's tapes and really do a Live at the Kirkland, go through the years and have the current night and some of the other pick and choose stuff. That might be fun.
I think it would be, yeah.
I mean, it's just a work in progress, just an idea, and I think it's cool to get a CD out because a nightclub, it's such an essential component of our scene.
Yeah, there was another fellow that booked the Kirkland. I didn't always have the exclusive booking. Joe liked to mix it up, and there was a fellow who did Thursdays, and he actually put out a CD of all the bands that played for him on Thursdays.
And what's that called?
What's the name of that, the Bigfoot monster, Sasquatch?
Sasquatch, okay.
Sasquatch. He took the S off it to make it funny. Sasquatch. I think that's, that was the name of the record company. I don't know, Joe, I forget. It was a while back. It was probably like 98 or 99.
We'll have to seek that one out. Do you have a copy?
No, I never got a copy of that. I didn't have a CD player back then.
Whoa. Okay.
I held on to my turntable until I started putting CDs out myself. About 2000, I had to break down and buy a CD player.
Well, I think that the fun thing is that you can actually take the live tapes from Live at Club Bohemia, put them up on emusic.com, where they're up there in cyberspace, and then if people want the tangible record, they can get it at the club or whatever. But it's just neat to kind of document the scene and have this stuff. Live at the Rat album is such a rarity.
Yeah.
And people seek it out on eBay, and it's just kind of fun stuff. But we're going to get back to music and other things, but right now, a hot topic, Steve, is Da Vinci Code.
Uh-huh.
Are you aware of the book? I mean, have you read it?
No, I haven't read the book. I read a little bit in the paper, and I'm familiar with the premise. The basic premise.
I should have brought the book. There was a book that just sued Da Vinci Code and lost. A Holy Grail or something, so I got it off eBay quickly. And I've got it at the house. I haven't had time to read it. I've been immersed in the Beatles. But there is some book that puts forth the theory without being fiction. Well, according to them, it's nonfiction. Yeah. But you've studied a lot of this material.
Yes, yeah.
Where do you get a hold of your historical religious material?
That depends. I worked in downtown Boston, and there's a Commonwealth bookstore right across the street, and it used to be something else before then, but it was a used bookstore. And they have stuff outside. Before Commonwealth took it over, it was a lot cheaper. It used to be like 50 cents or $1. Now the Commonwealth is there. The used books go for usually about average of $2 to $3. But, anyways, they're there. I buy a lot of the used books on the cheap, and then I'll go downstairs and start looking around and get some more there. So I buy quite a few of them there. I'll go over to the Seven Spirits bookstore in Central Square, which is always a mistake because I'll go in there and spend, a couple of $100.
It's a trip, that place.
Yeah. So I got a lot of books there. And some of it's just chance. You just happen to see something and pick it up or find it in the subway.
Is your wife a reader?
No.
Does she let you have the books, though?
Well, I mean, I have the books in the house. It's just we get so much. She collects all kinds of stuff. So there's one of the things I've always wanted is a bookshelf where I could actually keep the books for reference. I mean, I have the books in the house someplace, but to put my hands on them is a different story.
That's the same in my house. We've got bookcases and shelving, but I just went to the Medford Public Library book sale yesterday.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I've got 2 copies of this, but a third would be nice, Alan Siegel's Breaking into the Record Business. It's a great textbook basically for the people I'm working with. And I think it's such a good book. It's for $1, I need it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do it too sometimes.
I think that those of us in the music field, Steve, would...
Collectors?
Well, yeah, but there's a reason for it. I mean, there's information in this Beatles book. It's not like we just collect. We gather the information, we process it. And I wanted to pick your brain today on some of the fascinating things I know in some of our conversations we've had on religion. The virgin birth. If we were talking about that, I thought that was fascinating.
Yes, that, as I told you the other day, the church did not come up with that theology till about 200 AD or so. And the reason they came up with it was, despite the spread of Christianity, women still would flock to the temples of Isis or some of the other fertility gods, and the church just couldn't stamp out the worship of a fertility god, so they basically came up with the theological theory of the Virgin Mary. And a lot of the trappings of Mary, like Mary, Queen of the Heavens, before that it was Isis, Queen of the Heavens. A lot of the way she's depicted, you can find in ancient Egypt, or not even so much ancient Egypt, but the way they depicted Isis with the stars and just a lot of the symbols that the church adopted for the Virgin Mary came from Isis.
I have a friend, a colleague, who actually co-hosts the show sometime, and he's very Catholic. And I brought up the discussion to him the other day, and he said, well, you see, the virgin birth did happen historically, and then there was that time later that they re-emphasized it. It is in the Bible with Gabriel the angel, right, making the announcement. There were announcements of the coming of Christ.
Trying to remember, I believe she might have made the announcement, but I don't know if she was a virgin in the Gospels or not. I have to go back and read them. I know in the Quran it's definitely, the angel Gabriel comes and announces to Mary that she's going to have a baby, and how can I have a baby? I've never been touched by a man. And Gabriel says, "Oh, for Allah, it's easy. Allah can do anything." He says a thing, and it is.
I didn't realize that Mary's in the Quran.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mary is. In fact, whenever they refer to Jesus, it's Jesus, son of Mary, or they call him the Messiah.
Oh, so he's called the Messiah in the Quran.
Oh, yeah. They definitely believe he was the Messiah, and the Muslims believe that Mary had an immaculate conception. What they don't believe, though, is that Jesus is God, or that Allah is the Father. They say, how could Allah be a father? Because he wouldn't have relations with a woman. I mean, he probably could if he wanted. He could do anything, but they say, God forbid, Allah forbid, he wouldn't, touch a woman. So how could he be the father, except in symbolically?
Interesting. I used to listen to Catherine Coleman, the evangelist, and she went into the Vatican and got papers where she read about Pontius Pilate's wife being a follower of Jesus.
That's probably true, yeah. There was, I'm trying to think, Claudia, was that her name, Claudia, was Pontius Pilate's wife?
I don't know.
Yeah, she probably was. I mean, I think that's in the Bible, too, how I think she told Pontius Pilate, I was going to say call him, they didn't have phones in those days, sent a message to him and told him to go easy on Jesus because she had a bad feeling, or had a dream or something in the middle of the night.
According to Catherine Coleman, Jesus had healed Pontius Pilate's son, and that's why he was so conflicted, because he had to deal with government, but he had his wife and his son involved in this new...
Well, I never heard that. What I heard was that Pontius Pilate was quite the bloodthirsty tyrant. I believe that the historical records show that when he first came into Jerusalem, he tried to put the Roman eagle in the temple and a couple other things that the Jews found blasphemous. And he almost had an uprising on his hands then. He had to take out the graven images. But I think the history shows that he was, crucified quite a lot of rebels in Palestine, and that eventually he was so bad and bloodthirsty that Rome recalled him. I don't think he left under good circumstances. And I think most historical scholars believe that the Gospels, as they stand today, kind of whitewash the story. You have to remember that I don't think the Gospels were necessarily written for the Jewish people. They were written for the other people of the Roman Empire, and the people that wrote them were afraid of retaliation, so that they were written with that kind of view. A lot of stuff was soft soap so that the Romans wouldn't come down too hard on the Nazarenes, as they called them in those days. The term Christian was actually a derogatory term. I think it started in Antioch about maybe 150 BC or something. It was actually, a slur.
Really?
Yeah. But they would call them like the Way or the Nazarenes, because Nazarene was an ancient Jewish sect anyways. Samson was a member of it, and I forget how far back it went. But they took vows, they didn't cut their hair, didn't eat meat, didn't drink strong liquor.
What do you think of, a week ago there was all this controversy about the movie coming out, and I'm thinking, boy, the Catholic Church is going after this movie that's only going to help it. Having a protest is only going to get the word out.
Yeah.
People aren't going to boycott. That's number one. But then the critics kind of hammered the movie.
Yeah, they've panned it, yeah.
But then it came out with like a second only to like Passion of Christ, or maybe there was another movie, but it had a huge worldwide weekend.
Yeah, I saw that in the paper today. I forget how much it grossed, $77 million, $1 billion.
About a quarter of a billion, but 77 million in America, right?
Yeah.
And then like 240 million worldwide,
Yeah.
which is like ridiculous.
No, you're right. When they protest that, it just makes the, makes more for sales. I forget, when I was in college, they did the same thing. It might have been The Passion of Christ. It was some movie about Jesus that came out probably about 1982.
The last Temptation.
That might have
Martin
been it.
Scorsese.
That might have been it. And yeah, they protested it, and they just, upped the sales, spiked the sales.
Well, I don't think that movie would have done anything without the protest, because it really wasn't that great. It's looked at now as a classic, but let me take that back. I don't mean great as a movie. It's a good Martin Scorsese movie. It wasn't a commercial movie, where this is a commercial movie. Scorsese did not make that to be commercial. I don't remember. It was a long time ago, though. Do you think that with the Da Vinci Code out there, and even though they say up front it's fiction, do you think it will get people to start investigating and looking at things other than what they're handed?
It might. It might. I mean, if people go and see it and they start wondering about it, they possibly might. I guess with the internet, it's a lot easier for people to investigate. They don't have to, go look for the Gnostic Gospels and things like that to try and get the sources.
The internet's amazing, man. They had the whole conspiracy of Joplin, Hendrix, John Lennon, all the deaths of these rock stars are being...
They all had names that began with J.
I didn't consider that. It was just...
Joplin, John Lennon, Brian Jones.
That too, but...
Jim Morrison.
There's one theory that the FBI just didn't want the counterculture having such control over the kids. And so when, Al Wilson died of canned heat, there's a great site on John Lennon, and it notes that Al Wilson, Janis Joplin, and Jimi Hendrix were supposed to play the day that Al Wilson died. I never realized, he grew up in Arlington, where I grew up. And we all knew he was like, this Arlington guy in Canned Heat, the singer.
I never knew that.
Yeah, and so it was in the Arlington Advocate when he died. He died under the redwood trees that he loved so much of a heroin overdose. But I never thought anything sinister of it until I saw this conspiracy theory. Now get this, they put Canned Heat on the plane, they couldn't find Al Wilson that day. Well, you've got this big thing you've got to play in Europe. So they got on the plane, they played with Joplin and Hendrix that night. But then they found out when they were in Europe that Al Wilson was dead. Okay, so that's September 1st. September 18th, Hendrix is dead. October 4th, Joplin. So within the span of a month and 3 days, these three counterculture figures were gone. Now, you say, well, Al Wilson wasn't in their league, and he also didn't, he might have been talent-wise a great individual, but he wasn't the superstar that Joplin and Hendrix were. But he had an album cover out with the flag, the U.S. flag, upside down on the moon.
This was a Canned Heat album?
Yeah. So Canned Heat had this picture of themselves on the moon with the flag upside down.
They were pretty popular back in their day. I remember seeing them at Woodstock, and they had quite a crowd.
So you realize that J. Edgar Hoover had his problems with whatever, but to see these three rock stars gone within the span of a month.
Well, I mean, John Lennon was definitely assassination. There's no doubt about it was assassination. That would not surprise me if the government was, behind that one. And, Hendrix, too. I mean, I could see that upsetting some people.
Well,
I have a little bit more trouble with Canned Heat. I mean, the upside-down flag notwithstanding, I mean, they weren't, a real political band. They're basically just a blues boogie band. And even, Janis Joplin wasn't too political, but, you never know.
They all had a drug connection.
Yeah.
That was in there, too. But I never realized that Janis Joplin died of, when she died of that hot shot, 8 or 9 other people died that same night.
I never knew that either.
I read The Scars of Sweet Paradise, and so when you read Scars of Sweet Paradise and then her sister's book, I think is Love, Janis, all the letters Janis wrote the sister says that it wasn't anything sinister. Scars of Sweet Paradise, it's a whole other thing. Some people believe that her boyfriend was in cahoots with her dealer. Her dealer was very careful, but that night, a lot of people died that night, and so it was like they were out to get Janis. They didn't care if there were other casualties.
Well, it could have been that, or it could have just been a very strong shipment.
Yeah.
Like, nowadays, like when the China White comes in and, a lot of people die. But that's a little bit different, because I believe, if I understand from the newspapers, that China White is like a synthetic form of heroin. And the reason that the people die is, I guess, when they cut it up, it doesn't all get mixed well, so that somebody can get like a real strong, dose. Scary
stuff.
Yeah.
You wonder why people even experiment with all the tragedies that have happened through the whole rock and roll era.
Even before that, the jazz era too. A lot of people died trying to be Charlie Parker.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So what do you like jazz?
I love jazz, yeah.
Who's your favorite?
Coltrane, John Coltrane.
Really?
Yeah. Their favorite musician, period, but definitely my favorite jazz musician.
So after you were playing trumpet with the Modniks and guitar in bands, what prompted you to make the organ the key instrument now? Because that's what people know Mickey Bliss and his organ combo.
Well, I started that back in the 70s. I used to run Jack's Drum Shop.
You did?
Oh, yeah. And
we must have met there then, too.
It's possible. I was there from, I want to say like about 72 to 76. I remember, or maybe 75.
That catered to a lot of Berkeley students, right?
Yeah, well, when I first was there, we were right downtown because there was still a lot of gigs for musicians in the downtown area.
Ah.
And Wurlitz's had been downtown, and Jack's was still downtown in Park Square. And for some reason or other, the owner moved up to Boylston Street, probably to get to the Berkeley trade. because I helped to move. I'd been there about 6 months, and we moved the whole store up to Boylston Street, where it is now.
Oh, so you moved it to Boylston Street?
Yeah.
Now, was the Stone Phoenix underneath it at the time?
Well, it wasn't, I mean, it was there. It wasn't, there was the next building over. But yeah, the Stone Phoenix was there. There was a pool room, and then underneath the pool room was the Stone Phoenix. And then at one time, they put a recording studio in the same building above the Stone Phoenix. That didn't last too long, but it was there maybe a year. I think Gunther might have had that studio, but I'm not sure.
And you had the BFVF on the corner, Boston Film and Video Foundation.
Well, that was the same. I think they moved into the space where the Stone Phoenix was, or the same building. I'm not sure if they actually moved downstairs into the Stone Phoenix. I don't know. It was a while ago, but yeah, it was there. And even before then, there was a lot of clubs. I remember when I was in high school, there was a lot of coffee houses there, and I mean, the Doors used to play there. And
did you see them?
I didn't see them, but did you see the flyers? You know, for the Doors.
So they played right at the Stone Phoenix?
Well, there was a place upstairs that I used to hang out when I was in high school. I can't remember the name of it. And then there was a famous, real famous coffee house there that was big in the 60s and 70s. I wish I could remember the name of it.
Unicorn.
Unicorn, yeah. Unicorn. It used to be over where the Jazz Workshop was, and then it moved up there. There was a place called the Red Lion.
Jazz Workshop was on Boylston Street.
Further down.
Across the street from like Lord and Taylor and the Prudential and everything, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like the Unicorn used to be there either at that exact same space or near there, and then, like I said, it moved up there. Actually, I saw John Lee Hooker there. I could have played with him, too, but I was too shy. I was walking in, and he asked me if I would play bass with him.
Oh, man.
I was too shy. And then when I went to see a show that night, I wished I took the gig because all the bass players go, you know, boom, 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 boom. It's pretty much the same thing all night.
Hooker.
Yeah, John Lee.
And that was where?
That was at the Unicorn. That would have
when
been
it was on Boylston?
Well, it was on Boylston near Berkeley.
Okay.
Near Berkeley. Yeah, I'd been walking by for my classes at Berkeley, and I guess I heard him in there like doing a sound check, and I stuck my head in, and he talked to me from the stage, saw me with my guitar case, and asked me if I played bass, which, yeah, I did have a bass. I could have played bass.
So the Stone Phoenix was like on Boylston and Mass Ave, right there on the corner.
Well, in between. There was that block between where the original Berkeley building was back in the 70s, when it used to be a hotel. I guess it was quite a racy hotel in its time.
Really?
From what I understand, yeah, before Berkeley took it over. And, yeah, that little block there, where Jack's is.
So they were both in the same block, Unicorn and Stone Phoenix? Oh, I didn't realize it. Wow.
Yeah.
And then you had
the same block. And
Tea Party became, what, Avalon?
Yeah, Tea Party, that's over on the Fenway, across from Fenway Park.
So it was all within walking distance
for
people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, what a cool potpourri of music.
Yeah.
Even the Jazz Workshop and Paul's Mall were great in their day.
They were great, yeah.
Because our friend John Macy, when he had Fox Passes playing on the 22nd, Fox Pass played in, I guess, Captain Swing opened for them. And that's how they got their deal with Fred Lewis.
Just the old Cars, right, Captain
And that's
Swing?
how they became the Cars.
Yeah.
Or maybe the Cars opened up for Fox Pass. But they all knew each other, and Fred saw them, and the rest is history. And,
yeah, I remember Fox Pass used to play over the Cask and Flagon quite a bit back in the... Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, that place on that baseball place.
I taped the Velvet Underground there in 1973.
Wow.
The very last performance by Doug Yule and the band.
Yeah.
The tape was stolen. It's out on Captain Tripp, and I'm a little incensed about it because they could have come to me. They knew that I had the tape, and I digitized it. So there's like a third-generation tape on this box set called Final VU. Willie Loco's on it because he was in the band, but not in the Cask and Flagon version. But I do have 3 extra tracks that they don't have out. And I have a much cleaner tape, so I'm negotiating with Doug Yule to see if we can put out, like, really put it out right with the liner notes and everything. It's funny how the tapes, when you tape and you lend it to one person, I lent my friend Ron Scarlett the T-Rex stuff, and it's bootlegged out in England. You know, 3rd or 4th generation, because one guy makes it for another guy, and they pass it around, and then it's like, well, wait a minute. I got the master tapes here, you know?
Yeah, it's like when you have a secret, you tell somebody, and don't tell anybody else. You just tell that one other person, and the whole world knows.
Well, you're making a tape for a friend because you know they love it.
Yep.
But you never think that, oh, of course they're going to, like, dub it, because I didn't say don't, you know? And a friend of mine said, you just don't even tell people you have them. That's the mantra.
Yeah.
I taped Mark Bolan's only 3 times through Boston. He was on BCN, which became the bootleg. No one taped it. and I had like a recorder to the speaker, and that's the tape that exists of him on BCN playing acoustic. And then he did the Orpheum opening, the Doobie Brothers opened for him, and they blew him off the stage commercially. People didn't understand what he was doing.
Yeah.
I loved what he was doing.
Yeah.
But the fans were there to listen to the music, because RKO was the station that broke it nationally. And then he played with Three Dog Night, and at the Boston Garden, I taped all 3 shows. It was, there was, like Artie. There's Artie,
Yep.
and there's... But the stuff survives, and it's good that someone does that. I think, some of the clubs in New York, Steve, the cutting room has a CD burner in the soundboard.
Yeah.
So if bands want the CD that night, they can...
Middle East has that.
Do they?
You don't have to go to Boston, New York. Yeah, the Middle East does that, and people can buy the CDs right at the end of the show.
If people like the idea of live at the Kirkland, we should probably talk to the bands, or you should talk to the bands. It's not a bad idea to have someone there. Or just drop a line, maybe.
Oh, you mean to do it on a regular basis? Well, the problem with our club is that we're real lo-fi, so we don't like mic the amps or the drums or all that, so it'd be tough to take it right out of the board and do that.
Oh, with the Middle East mics everything.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, they're, bigger club, and, yeah, they have, real professional sound system and sound man and everything. I mean, with us, half the time, well, not half the time, but on Thursday nights, I'm working the door and the board at the same time. So I don't think that would be the best, circumstances for, trying to do a live recording.
I always tape my band in practice and on gigs, and I can't believe a lot of bands didn't, because it's just another form of grabbing your art. At least you get to reflect back on how you performed that night. But then they become documents.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to do that in the 80s. Not so much anymore, but in the 80s I used to tape every rehearsal session and go back and listen to it, and try and tape every show and go back and listen to it. Like you said, it's a, if nothing else, it's a learning tool.
Do you still have any of the tapes?
Yeah, I probably do. Cassettes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
No, it's history, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say I probably do. I know I do. I just never listened to them, but I have them.
Now, you put out a couple of records.
Yes, I put out 3 45s in the 80s, and then 1 CD in 1999.
Oh, you put out a CD?
Yes, yeah.
So what was the first record you made, the first 45?
The first 45 was called Venus Dressed in Plastic Garbage, and it was backed with Trapezoid.
And who was the band?
That was called the Mickey Bliss Band.
Oh, so that was the first Mickey Bliss
Yes.
record.
Yeah, first Mickey Bliss record.
Where'd you go to record?
Newberry Sound.
Ah. Was Ken Canavos the engineer?
Yeah, in fact, he had just opened it up at that point. It was a brand new studio. It was over on, it was actually on Newberry Street, which where it's got its name. Corner of Newberry and Boylston, over where the Virgin record store is, was up on probably the 3rd floor of that building.
What year was that about?
I recorded in 81.
Now, do you know I'm working with Ken now?
No, I didn't know that.
Do you know Tenny Komar? Tenny
I know
Komar
that,
and the
yeah.
Silencers.
Yep, Tenny, yeah.
We've got her tapes. Now, Tenny taped everything. So she's bringing me on board to go through everything. So we brought the tapes 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, today, Monday, May 8th, 15th. 2 weeks ago today, we brought the tapes over to John Weiner at MWorks. You know the mastering lab in Cambridge?
Yep.
He baked her tapes in a convection oven.
To oxidize them.
Yep. And now they're spinning them off so we can take them to Newberry, where you recorded your first record.
Yeah.
They're up in Wilmington now. And he's got a state-of-the-art
Oh,
facility.
that's where he is. Because for a while he was in the Fenway. He moved over across from Fenway Park.
Because the Tower Records booted out Boston Phoenix and Ken and everyone else.
Yeah.
I think they paid them all to get out.
Probably, yeah.
And then you're right, he moved over across the street. I needed a studio back in December, and I'm looking through the Boston Phoenix on the internet. Oh, Ken's in Wilmington, wow. I gave him a call, and it's like right up the road, and it's just a great, like this,
Yeah.
WCAT is renovated. He's got this space in a commercial industrial park in Wilmington. And it's great. We recorded in there in December. Mickey, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
Now he's got all the ISO booths with cameras and TV sets. So you can watch the drummer, or you can watch whatever you want. It's very high tech. It can go right into the computer, and we can edit it and put it on public access. So we're going to be doing that now.
Unbelievable.
So you work there, and it's just kind of funny, full circle. That's where I'm working right now.
Yep.
All these years later. I first went in and met Ken in '83 with, I think, a band called Crystal Image out of Medford. And they became Narrow Margin, one of the two, and then they became Exact. But it's interesting how the years, those of us who are still around, I think those recordings are just, again, like the live things, documents.
I actually recorded in Ace Studios, which used to be the only recording studio in Boston at one time.
When did you do that?
Ace, probably 75. So it was like a 4-track studio. It was down on Boylston Place, which is right near where that crane fell off, that unfortunate incident on Boylston Street, between the Combat Zone and Charles Street. There was a little alley, and there was a 4-track, and I remember the guys all had ties. The engineer had like a shirt and tie on, and it was just interesting the way they did the recording. You'd go in like, okay, guitar player, play something. You'd play a chord. Okay, stop. Drummer, play something. Around the room. Okay, stop. And it took them like probably 5 minutes to set up the mics and everything, and you just went in and we recorded, I don't know, probably like 12 sides, just boom, 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 and it sounded perfect. Now you go in the studio, it takes like, 6 hours just to set up your guitar, and I don't know who the engineer was. I mean, it was a couple of years before they went out of business.
And what was the band?
Oh, I was playing with this fellow called Big Red. He was an organist. So I think we just played under his name. Big Red Andy Robinson.
What'd you play?
I believe I was playing guitar on that session, either guitar or bass.
Do you have any of the session?
No, he might have them, but I don't have them. I never did get any dubs. I mean, back then it wasn't as easy to make dubs as it is now. Although, actually, now that I think of it, Ace used to have, you could go in there with a tape and they could cut a record for you.
Lacquer.
No, they cut a real vinyl tape. It was 10 inches up. You could either do 10 inches or 12 inches, and you go in with your tape, and they'd cut a record for you right there, one-off record.
An acetate. Would it?
I think it was like a regular vinyl. I don't think it was an acetate, but yeah, it was only one side. I remember that.
Okay.
It was only one side, and you could actually see a piece of metal where you put the spindle.
Sure. Wow. That's pretty wild. So, do you know this fellow still? Are you still in touch with him? Or?
Big Red?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I still see him once in a while, yeah.
Oh, you got to get your session, man.
I'll see if he still has it. I mean, that was, a long time ago.
Oh,
But he's still around. I get him to play the Kirkland once in a while.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
And, actually, people might see him. It's kind of sad now. Most of the musicians that I know from that era that are still around, I mean, if they're making money, they're down on the subway playing, and that's where he plays these days. It's like the Washington Street subway is his venue. But he tells me he never makes less than $100 a day playing down the subway.
Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good for him. Wow, so you played at Ace. I believe the G Clefs were involved in that.
Probably sounds familiar.
Teddy Scott and the G Clefs, and they had some involvement. They might have cut their records there. The hit record, first Boston rock and roll hit record ever back in the 50s, Ka-Ding Dong, the G Clefs, doo-wop group. So then you did the Ace session, and then you must have played in studios before you went to Newbury.
Yeah, I think so. I remember I played at that one in Jamaica Plain.
Dimension?
Yeah, it was brand new when I was in there.
Really?
I'm trying to think of the guy that took it over. He writes for The Noise. He's on WMFO. Plays drums, and he could play some keyboards. Yeah, anyways, losing my... Oh, Joel Simkus. Joel Simkus, he took it over.
He did?
Yeah. For a while, he had it. He was trying to make a go of it. But I was doing a show with T-Max when T-Max did the 20th anniversary for The Noise, and we went out there to rehearse. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I could tell it was the same place, but when I'd been there in the 70s, they had just opened, and it was brand new, and, geez, the place got worn out. I mean, yeah, 20 years or whatever, 20, 30 years, but still, it was just unbelievable, the difference, how much it had deteriorated.
You know, what's interesting is I have a cassette from Dimension of Willie Loco Alexander and the Boom Boom Band, did demos for MCA Records, okay?
Yeah.
And I don't know if Craig Leon has the demos, he was the producer, or if maybe Joel would know where they are. I should bring him up. They're unbelievable. they're better than the MCA album. And you listen to the album, you say, why did they spend the money re-recording these tunes? And they're good on the MCA album, but they're great at Dimension. Well, they went up to Sun Treader in Vermont, and they homogenized the music. And it's like, man, this stuff was just killer on the demos they made. And Dimension was a fine studio. Why not use those tapes for a major label?
Yeah. I don't know, Joe.
You know, it's just one of those things. There's a lot of great Boston demos. You must get tons of demos in the mail.
Not so much anymore. I did at one time when I first started doing the Kirkland. I'd get a ton of them.
Now you know
everybody had cassette tapes, so it was all cassette tapes. But yeah, I used to get a ton of them.
And now everyone knows you, and they just ring you up and, I want a gig.
Well, I don't know what it is. We just don't get that many demos. No, actually, you know, I spend most of my time now chasing the bands. You know, for the first 10 years or 11 years, I don't know. Anyways, it was the toughest part of the job. Was telling bands, I'm sorry, I can't book you, call me back in a couple of months because I didn't have space. But, you know, lately it's been me, you know, chasing the bands, just going nuts, trying to, you know, fill all the slots, which I guess I have about 12 a week I have to fill.
Oh, that's pretty healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's 48 a month.
Yeah. Yeah, so I spend a lot of time calling bands and, you know, trying to get people that can play. And
so that's about 600 bands a year you're putting in there, or 600 performances.
Performances. I mean, we repeat a lot of bands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the way I look at it. I mean, a lot of people can put down the club or put down the band.
Oh, I don't think anyone puts it down. I think, no, I mean, you know, John Macy said, thank God for Mickey Bliss. He's really keeping the, bands really appreciate that they have a venue where they can go and do their thing. And
well, we took a big hit when, you know, Joe died, and right about the same time they remodeled. And a lot of the bands that used to play there didn't want to play there anymore because they didn't like the way it was remodeled. They put a railing around the stage and, you know, windows behind the stage. And
is there a volume problem?
well, there was at first, but it was all apparently coming from one building that was 2 doors down, and all the tenants got thrown out of there because they were trying to make it into condos, and it seems like they ran into financing problems because the project has just died. So we've been lucky that way. We haven't had volume complaints in years. But yeah, when they first did it, the club used to have a drop ceiling for one thing, and it had like cement walls, and it had carpets on the floor. You could drop a hand grenade inside the place. You couldn't hear it outside. As you know, I MC the shows there, and a lot of times it'd be too loud for me inside. I'd go outside to get away from the noise. And I wouldn't even know the band stopped playing. The doorman or the bartender would come running out. Hey, Mickey, you know, you missed your cue. Get back in there. You know, now, even with like an acoustic act, you can go down the street like 2 blocks or 3 blocks and still hear them playing. It's just they, you know, completely ruined the natural soundproofing that was in there.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
But it's still fun, man. It was a lot.
It's still a lot of fun
atmosphere.
But as I started to say, we took a big hit then because, you know, I mean, plus Joe was taking care of a lot of the bands. Well, not a lot of them, but there was a couple in particular that he used to hang around all night and drink with them after hours and play pool. And the new management, you know, wouldn't do that type of stuff. So, you know, we took a big hit. But, you know, I mean, I'm still ticking, and the club's still ticking. But, you know,
it's a comfortable
in the
atmosphere.
90s, we probably were viewed like the way the Abbey is now, is like, you know, the hip place is like an alternative to the Middle East, and, you know, we don't get that anymore. But like I said, I still have my gigs, so.
Well, everything's cyclical, and
Yeah.
you know, it's just so it's just so cool, the club, and it has a good history. I think that I think that's going to come full circle. Maybe the CD will help people say like, wow, you know, this place is really happening. Before you took over, what were they booking? Did it have any kind of reputation before then?
Well, it depends how far you want to go back. Like Joe Huron, who I said owned it, he, I guess, bought it with some people in 1969, and I guess he used to do the booking. And he was pretty good at it when he was young. I mean, they tell me he used to have people stand in a line around a block to get in. Of course, that was back in the days when the drinking age was only 18 and there was no other entertainment. I mean, a lot of places were like that. I remember I used to go to Jack's up on Mass Avenue, and, you know, you could never get in Jack's right away. You always had to stand in line to get in.
It was a small club, yeah.
You know, a lot of clubs were like that. They were overflowing. It didn't really matter who was playing. You just people would just go to the clubs. People went out 7 nights a week. So anyways, yeah, Joe did the booking himself, and I guess, probably he wasn't all that old when he died. He was only 58, but I think he had premature health problems because he, started to slow down probably. He was 53 when I was there, when I came in, and he had already slowed down and really wasn't doing the booking, didn't want to do the booking anymore. And the manager that he had there didn't really have a clue. He didn't know anything about bands and really didn't have a clue how to book the band. So they were just basically waiting for bands to come in and ask them to play. And from what I understand, they'd get one every once in a while, and the band would come in and bring all their equipment in, and nobody would show up to see him. So, but I was surprised. We took over, and we pretty much had success right from the start. I wanted to do it and wanted to take the chance on doing it, but I've been in the business a long time, and I wasn't really, real optimistic that we would have any kind of success. And our grand opening was, pretty big, and the only little bit of a clout we had is about 3 weeks after we opened, Martin Doyle opened the Causeway down the north end, and that was like the big hot thing. And so there was a couple of weeks where it was pretty tough. Everybody,
I remember,
was going to the Causeway, but
where is Martin?
Last I know, he's in Provincetown, although I know he was doing some stuff down in South Carolina too, but I think he's back in Massachusetts. He had taken over another club in Cambridge for a while,
right near the
Overdraft. The Overdraft was on Cambridge Street, down near the courthouse. And he ran that for maybe a year, and then they sold it.
Then he ran one right near the Middle East, the Landing or something?
Phoenix Landing?
Underground.
I didn't realize Martin had that, but that was across the street from the Middle East.
He had it for a little while. And Martin's been a player, and I think he started as a bar back at the Paradise.
He may well have.
I think that's where I met him. But it's a fascinating scene, and boy, 13 years ago, were you booking 48 bands a week? A month?
No. And we just started one night a week. They only had entertainment one night, and myself and the other guys in the Modniks with me, we had the Friday night, to book bands, and Thursday we used to use, to practice for a while. And then what happened? Okay, so we did the Fridays, and it was working pretty well. And then one of the manager had a brother that came in and worked as a doorman one time, and he saw what was happening Fridays, and he decided he wanted to get in the bookings. So they gave him Saturdays. But the problem was it was like our PA system, and at that time they used to make us break it down. We used to have to break it down and put it in the closet.
Oh, whoa.
So the guy, the manager's brother there, that would book the bands and tell them, oh yeah, we got a PA system, we're all set. The bands would come in, there'd be no PA system, they'd be all mad. They'd think it was the club's PA system, so they'd pull it out and set it up, but they'd either not be careful or purposely trash it because they were all mad because the club had screwed them on the PA system. So that was kind of tough. And then some of the bartenders started booking and other people. So we had 3 or 4 different people that were booking. But it was, our PA system. And I'd come in Fridays to do my show, and I'd have to spend an hour or 2 trying to put the PA system back together again.
Oh, man.
And, every time a speaker would get blown or something, it was me that had to pay for the speaker or, buy the parts. So it was a little bit tough. But then when Joe passed away, that was one of the good things about the new management. They kind of thought it would be a better idea just to have one person do the booking. So they let me do the booking. That was the good part. The bad part was I was working 4 nights a week, plus my day job.
Whoa.
So I was pretty burnt out.
Now, that's an interesting area because you had the In-Square Men's Bar.
Yeah.
And that was a fun place. I had the owner-manager on my TV show back in '95.
He was a nice guy.
Yeah.
Real nice guy.
Real cool guy. And then that place was really happening. COZ would do co-promotes, and I played there, and a lot of fun. Now you've got the Abbey in the Kirkland. How did the Abbey decide to get into this?
Okay, the Abbey is kind of a funny story, from my point of view. There was this, they had, trying to think of the name of the band, Snocket. They had actually sent me a demo tape. And back in those days, I was so high and mighty because I had so many people that wanted to play there. I played it, and they sounded like a frat rock band.
Kingsmen or something.
Well, if they sounded like the Kingsmen, I would have booked them. No, they sounded more like a contemporary type of frat band. And I wasn't really too impressed with them and I don't think they were real hips. So I said to myself, well, if they come and bother me for a gig, I'll give them a gig, but, I'm not going to call them or anything. So I never heard anything from them again, at least at the Kirkland. Next thing I know, these guys Schnocked were running a blues jam down at the Abbey. And then from there, somehow they tapped into getting some pretty good bands right off the bat, with some bands that I couldn't get. They started getting some, pretty good bands, and that's right about the time that the Kirkland remodeled, was when they started doing that. They might have maybe a couple of months before remodeled. So initially, they got a lot of the bands that weren't going to play the Kirkland anymore, like J.J. Rassler's band, Downbeat 5. When they first started playing, they used to play the Kirkland, but, they went over to the Abbey. Muck and the Myers used to play the Kirkland quite a bit, but there was the band before Muck. The Nines, I think, was the band, and then they morphed into Muck and the Myers.
I lose track sometimes.
Well, anyways, there was a whole slew of bands that used to play at the Kirkland that all went right over to the Abbey, and plus a lot of the people used to hang out at the Kirkland, like Kenny Highland and all those people, Miss Lynn. They all stopped hanging at the Kirkland and went down to the Abbey. But that's not to take away from what the people did at the Abbey. I mean, I think one of the guys in Schnocked bought into the Abbey. For all I know he did. I don't know if initially he bought into it, but I know he owns a part of it now.
Oh.
But he remodeled the whole place. Now, I was really impressed when I went in there and saw what they did with that room and, the way they built the stage up and the place for the sound man to do his stuff. And they even have like a ticket booth where a person sits and takes tickets. And they built a dressing room for the bands and all that type of stuff. So they, they really, they would have done it anyways. Whether the Kirkland did what it did or didn't, I mean, they would have got the business. Thing with the Kirkland, I mean, one of the things I like about it, after all these years, is its diversity. I mean, you have a lot of blue-collar workers in there, you have the sports guys, and it's not just a rock club, which makes it kind of interesting, but it also makes it tougher to get bands because they don't cater to the bands. I mean, the bands can go in and have a good time, but I mean, there's no dressing room for the bands, no drink tickets, that type of stuff. I mean, they don't really try and be per se a rock club. They just want to be a pub, a local pub. So as I said, I kind of like it because I like the diversity, but again, you don't get like all the hip young bands that the Abbey will get.
I liked the Abbey when it had the separation, but I understand it's better now. I liked being able to get away from the sound.
Like Cantones.
Yeah, it was very like Cantones. But of course, that was the catch-22 of Cantones. We wanted that wall to come down, and we couldn't.
Yeah.
Structurally, we could not eliminate that wall.
Oh, structurally. I thought that, Mario and the boys wouldn't let you knock it down.
They wouldn't let us knock it down because structurally, it would have been way too much money. The same dilemma the Paradise has. It would be like $1 million to change that. In the Paradise, that big pole that goes right up in front of the stage, $1 million. So now they've got the beautiful balcony. But I always thought when they remodeled the Paradise, they should have made it long way. Because I remember the old Boston Club, do you?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
When it was the Boston Club and the stage was where the sound booth is.
I don't remember too much about it. I just remember going there. There used to be this band, Witch, that used to play. They were one of the first female bands in Boston.
Oh, yeah, I remember Witch.
Yeah, one of the, the manager used to run the classified ads for the Phoenix.
Who's that?
Her first name was Elaine. I forget her last name.
Not Elaine Noble.
Might have been. It's been so long ago, I don't remember.
Wendy Sobel was in Witch.
Wendy was the keyboard player and the trumpet
Guitar player in Girls' Night Out.
Oh, okay.
So at one point, I don't know what time, but I think she was, we did a gig with them on Martha's Vineyard, my band, with Fred Pino from the Atlantics, John Morell on drums, he's from Lynn, and John Havorka on bass. We went down to Martha's Vineyard. I was the singer, and Witch played on the same bill with us. It was a very strange gig, I remember that. And I have it on tape.
Yeah, I
Which
used to know
were good.
Witch because the Phoenix used to be next door at Jack's at that time, so I know Elaine quite well, because her office was right next to us, and we used to go to all their shows. And I remember they'd take us down to like some, because they were all women's band. They used to play like the gay clubs down on Broad Street, and they'd invite us to the show. We'd be the only men in the club, and it'd be kind of.
Well, Elaine Noble was the big, she was the gay activist that actually got she was elected to some position.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
City council, so that's why I think it was her.
May have been, yeah.
And then there was a women's club called, was it Darts? On not Berkeley, but near Copley, maybe on Copley, there was a women's club. They decided to have rock bands around the Cantones days. So Elaine Noble was the booking agent, so she booked my band. And I said, Elaine, for you, we've got the only live performance ever of rock journalist Janice Reed. Please thank Janice for me. Janice had the column in Musicians.
I remember that, yeah.
And she came out with her umbrella and in drag, because Janice Reed was a guy, or is a guy, or and she didn't go over well. The women were not impressed with this guy getting into women. Janice Reed.
No.
It didn't go over well. And with that, anything you'd like to say to our audience as we, which were fun.
Yeah, which was fun. I remember they played Harvard one time, and me and my partner that used to run Jack's. Back in those days, on Jack's, there used to be, well, now they call them homeless men, but we used to call them winos. There was like a whole tribe of them that used to live there, and we used to know them all. We'd give them the half-empty beers at the end of the night, and the next day we'd be cleaning up and throw them a couple of bucks. So we were on our way over to Harvard to go see Witch play, and we ran into one of the winos we knew. And my friend says, "Oh, come on over. We're going to see a show." So we bring the guy over, and he had stolen like a steak out of, there used to be a supermarket on Mass Avenue. He had like a steak or something that he stole. He was getting his old overcoat. And, we take him in and they go, "Who's this?" And the kid says, "Oh, it's my dad." So they let him in. And he's walking around Harvard trying to sell the steak. "Would you like to buy a steak?"
Right out of Trading Places with Eddie Murphy. Steve,
I
Mickey
think they
Bliss.
eventually threw us up because I think they caught him urinating in that corner.
And on that note, Mickey, we'll see you at the Kirkland July 22nd. Visual radio, and you got to come back and talk more.
I got censored, huh?